Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episode and we will discuss on the barriers to growth. This is our 1420 episode. We have our world famous speaker, Madam Ali Rice, Mr. Rob Enderley, Mr. David, Mr. Paulo, and Mr. Bill. Uh, we have our expert from industry, from financial institutions, from consulting industries. So first thing first, we will discuss our first questions. Madam Ali, my first question for you: what internal limitations, skill, leadership, resources are preventing us from scaling?
Yeah, because I think it's access to education and resources. So first and foremost, it's that. And I also think there's systemic and structural and strategic challenges to growth as well. And there's also quite, like in the UK, there's quite a fixed mindset. So I think, that there's a significant barrier to kind of experimenting or innovating and doing things differently. So I think there's also kind of that, that resistance to change as well and to do different things differently. And as an educator, one of the most important things is fostering a love of learning and kind of an open-mindedness to kind of push things and create new boundaries. And so I think all of that's really important.
Mr. Rob, what's your thought about this question? What internal limitation, like skill, leadership, and resources, are preventing us from scaling?
Well, there's always when you have the kind of rapid advancement that we currently have, there's a lag in skills. The skills that you use prior to the advancement become obsolete, and the skills you need that are tied to the advancement. And here I'm mostly talking about artificial intelligence as an engine for growth, because it's a massive force multiplier. And so the difficulty we've got is AI is able to do an awful lot of things that people previously did, but now we need people that we didn't need before to implement the AI, to spin it up, train it, and to know how to properly use it. We just had a major issue with Musk's Grok, where they attempted to force outcomes, and it pretty much made the thing go crazy. And kind of showcasing again that 2001: A Space Odyssey was somewhat prescient, and so the difficulty right now is at all layers of development, top to bottom. We have a lot of inexperience, and that experience is doing some pretty awful things to the underlying engine. It's making an awful lot of the AI implementations non-performant, and the results are across the board suboptimal. And so and I would say because you've got another question coming that I'll kind of sort of hint at here is one of the big problems we've got right now is the lack of understanding on actually how to market these days. The entire marketing ecosystem has been blown up. Newspapers rely on a good source. Television, people are streaming now, so those ads aren't going anyplace. Magazines, nope. So our ability to actually get messages out and convince people to try a lot of the new stuff that we're building isn't working. I mean, we just Intel outsourced the marketing department, which I'm just kind of right. So in the end, we lack skills in a lot of critical areas, from understanding the core technologies to deploying the core technologies to marketing the core technologies. It's a bit of a mess now. And going back to Ali's comment on education, education is really letting us down at the moment. What we're teaching kids has really nothing to do with what they're going to have to know when they come out of school, and the end result is we're going to have some real difficulties with getting these kids jobs when they graduate, and being able to fix some of these underlying problems, because we're not really training up people like we should, and the skills and methods are going to need to be successful in this new, much more highly automated world.
Thank you, Professor David Spin. What's your thought on that particular question? What internal limitation, skill, leadership, or resources?
Well, Ali and Rob are both right. Part of it's the education. You hear me, Sharif, very often talk about we're in a time. It's not just the education of the new people coming into the workplace out of colleges out of trade school, out of boot camps, and other things like that. So it's just not the new ones, it's the ones which are in the existing workplace as well. I have multiple friends who have been laid off from places like General Motors, from Google, from Indeed, and other places like that, who have 25-year careers, but they're not going to be able to find jobs because they didn't do lifelong learning. And that's one of the big things as you look at this is the education is not just broken at the initial stage. The lack of lifelong learning is broken throughout it. And the other thing is you look at the skills is there's a lack of specialized talent today. That it's not just the technical, but it's managerial, it's creative, it's project management, because project management in this world has totally changed. There's limited innovation capability. The workforce today lacks really critical thinking and problem-solving skills that we see, particularly as you see the people who had those leaving the workforce because they cost too much. And so you see that as a big thing here. There's leadership challenges, though. Scaling is what we're trying to do. It requires clear leadership vision, well-communicated strategy, and that's the only way not to have confusion and misalignment. With the tough times we're in right now, with these shifts of market, globalization, technology, artificial intelligence, data, you have to delegate and empower more. And in times of change, empowerment and delegation go away. There's financial constraints which are there of all, of all different types. We have operational bottlenecks. Many of the outdated systems are inefficient. You cannot automate them. The AI tools don't work with many of the old systems. And so you have these operational bottlenecks. And you have low employee engagement right now because there is a fear of what's happening, and so more and more people are becoming disengaged. And you have that, and there's a resistance to innovation today because the cultures are beginning to discourage risk-taking, and penalize failure can be today really bad in the market we're in. So all of those things, Dr. Shree, really answer your question here about the internal limitations. And you throw that on top of a global economy that's totally in shifting, where you're seeing workforces that are one time globally distributed now beginning to become regionalized again. And there's a lack of communications between these regions that are further inhibiting the ability to grow.
Thank you. Mr. Paulo, what's your thought?
Well, we have to split the difference, just covering all the others already done really well aspects. From we said in Italy, okay, the head is smelling from the fish is smelling from the head. And so, what's about leadership? Does the new leader or the leader know properly how to move forward in this massive revolution? Because it's a thinking concept revolution, not just a technical one. And so open innovation and all related have to become reality, to build an ecosystem, not just a label, but a concrete action. And to have, of course, the possibility to govern this type of AI agents revolution, but a really human approach. What does it mean? Normally, leader was just talk better with the CFO than with the chief strategic officer. In reality, is a position on the strategic campaign, and the skill and the inner value of all intangible assets inside any type of companies or even institution have to be having an appropriate value. And the valorization mean, of course, training, mean, of course, different type of aspect regarding career and related. But first of all, I have to start with something starting from the leader and the CEO and the top management. So a kind of revolution have to be governed properly like that, with the skills properly trained even inside the company, not just in the new skill. On the new skill, totally correct what was done on the scholarship role and related. We need a more, let's say, open mind and mindfulness. Eduardo Bono signed that more than 40 years ago. But in practice, what we know about our own mind and related way to practice at the best, not just the brain, but all, even the moral compassion, let's say, on the humanity broader vision point of view, nothing at all by the normal scholar system. And so the multiverse was happening previously, that the metaverse, and that perhaps with a more holistic approach, even of course on creating and cultivating the talent for the new skills must be a new process. Automation and all related coming out with quantum computing in a couple of years will be more and more and endorse this type of massive revolution. We need properly new rules, even on how to govern it at the leadership point of view in the business and in the scholarship for the new talents.
Thank you. Mr. Bill, what's your thought? I think you are from healthcare industry, so how you want
Yes,
to this
thank you.
leadership?
Can you hear me all right? Okay.
Yeah.
So from the point of view of healthcare, the paradigm has been changing globally. So 10 years ago, we talked about health or public health. Now we're talking about One Health. So the scope, the focus is changing and evolving. And as that happens, we also have to become literate to the issues that embraces. And in the situation that I've been working in, where I mentor public health students from over 30 institutions, the main point that I find is issues having to do with basic understanding, communication skills, writing skills, reporting skills, grant writing, very basic issues. But in a new paradigm of now One Health and having to address that from a global issue, and where we really have kind of an issue with finding leadership is to look at potential candidates in terms of their skills, their abilities, and what we can teach them, what they can actually learn, but what inherent qualities they also have to be able to have good communication skills, to be able to pursue those areas. And so it is not everyone that is potentially has the potential to be a leader, but just like we find Olympians at a very early age and train them in the field of public health, we want to find the most enthusiastic and ambitious, as well as those willing to learn at as early an age possible. Some of them I get after medical school, some I get before medical school, and some don't go on to any clinical training at all. But if they have that spark in them to be able to make change and to take control and to communicate and to establish understanding and listening and deal with those health literacy issues, then we have a leader. And I'm in the process of looking at and moving that forward in many countries right now, and with some success.
Thank you. Thank you. My next question for Ali. What financial constraints are limited our ability to expand or invest?
Yeah, well, I think because definitely in the UK that we've had ever since 2020, we've had a cost of living crisis. So I think the thing is that as whatever you spend doesn't go as nearly as far as it did. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
And essentially, I just think the resources are limited. The health service isn't financed anywhere near as well as it should be. And essentially, the payment for one of my nephews is about to graduate as a doctor, so he's spent the last 5 years studying to be a doctor, and it's tough. So I think the thing is that the health service and the people that work within it aren't necessarily valued in the way they should, and essentially then that kind of falls down to bad care or care when there should be more segregation, but they kind of just have a one fit all for so that. So it's frustrating because people don't necessarily get the service and the provision that they need. So, and I think it's all about resources. There's also, I still think there's chiefs, that there's a lot of people that are in management positions or higher that don't necessarily do a good job. And the real work falls down to people that are underpaid. So, and it is about training and education and, and being equipped to deal with the problems, day in, day out. And the way that they approach patients is really important as well. So essentially, most patients should have a good experience. And one of the things that they should assess is their capability before they deal with that patient. So they know whether they can walk or not, whether they need help or not, And essentially, just recently, just in the last few days, somebody very close to me had quite a traumatic experience in hospital just for a few nights. But essentially, they weren't even put in a ward; they were just left in A&E overnight. So so I just think that I think everyone's under-resourced, and for me, definitely the systems, the health system, the education system, the financial system. They were all quite broken anyway before 2020, and COVID's always going to be an excuse for the fact they had to, change things, but we were ill-equipped to do what we were doing, and things needed to change and evolve anyway. So, all the systems need to, be shaken up and sorted out. So yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Rob. What your response? What financial constraints are limiting our ability to expand or invest or have different strategy for that?
Well, a variety of them. Typically, if you look over at China, the government is heavily invested in advancing their businesses at a significant rate, and you're seeing that advancement. In many ways, they are now ahead of the Western world in terms of electric vehicles, and on par or getting better with regard to artificial intelligence. And they're a little bit lagging a bit on processors, but in terms of the engines themselves, DeepSeek is very performant. And when it comes to even aircraft and space development, they've gone from being a lagging country to at least being on par, if not a leading country, largely due to the massive investments the Chinese government is making into their businesses and technological advancements. And their education system is actually pretty good too. So the probably not as good as I think probably should be, but still very, very, very competitive. And so the end result is the funding's available to drive that country forward at a very fast rate. Now they're at that speed they're moving. They're also making some mistakes. But that kind of comes with it. You just want to make sure you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. But the Western world is not investing at the same rate. The governments are not as focused on providing subsidies, particularly educational subsidies, and are often more focused on right content in schools as opposed I mean politically correct content in schools. Then in ensuring the students are coming out of the schools properly educated for the future. So, kind of across the board from education to R&D investment, we're not investing at the rate, the governments are not investing at the rate that they should be. And the end result is with China being perhaps the exception, and you might argue places like Singapore are kind of outliers as well. We're underinvesting currently in the technologies that we're developing and allowing Eastern countries to move, particularly China, to move far more quickly. And I think that's going to be problematic as we move into the era of fully autonomous weapons, robotics, and whether we're talking about military action or economic action, the differences in economies of scale and performance, and particularly manufacturing capabilities, are going to make it pretty clear that unless something changes, China is going to be very dominant as we enter the 2030s.
Thank you. My next question for Mr. David: are we targeting the right market segment and customer needs effectively in terms of solution?
Well, Sharif, that's a great question. Let me actually add one more point, if I can, to what Rob said, though. Because, Rob, I don't think it's just the money that the Chinese government is putting towards the people. I also think it is simply also the population there. Because
Yeah.
I've had Chinese tell me that our top 1% of our students, our top 1% of our professional is equal to your top 50% in numbers.
Yeah.
And so it's also, you've got a whole different way, particularly in China, now that they're beginning to embrace this more of targeting people for segments. And if you look at what PRC is doing there, they're doing an excellent job of government-directed targeting of industries. And it's not the organic growth that you see typically in the rest of the world. So that's just one thing I'd like to add on to what Rob has said. But to answer your question about the market segments and the customer needs, we are doing a okay job, not an outstanding job, as you look at how to scale with that. Because targeting those market segments and the market careabouts is really essential for growth, and growth should lead to profitability, but that you need customer loyalty to do that, and that's some of the targeting. So if you look at what a market segment should be, it should be measurable, it should be accessible, it should be substantial, large enough to justify you targeting it. You need to have the ability to differentiate in it, to have segments you can do. It needs to be actionable. And many people forget that as you look at markets, they need to be actionable. And they just say, gee, this market is a $100 billion market, and we're going to go to it without understanding those. And then you have to also look at segmentation as you look at targeting the right markets. You need to look at demographics, the age, the gender, the income, education, what's the geography? Is it global? Is it regional? Is it city? Is it climate? What are the values, the interests, the lifestyle? What are the behavioral parts? What are the purchasing habits, brand loyalty? That one's very, very interesting as you look at how that plays out. And then you kind of need to look at how to target these. You analyze the current segments, what's going on. You research the audience behaviors. You develop personifications. And you look at your products and your development and your product management. How does it work across those segments and those behaviors? And how can you respond to it? And then you have to monitor it. I mean, it's not a static element, and begin to map those. And what are some of the warning signs there, which most people don't want to hear? Low response rates, high churn. I'm amazed, particularly in healthcare, at the churn rates today, the negative feedback, and how do you begin to work through all of those. And, particularly, Bill, as you were talking about healthcare, we've seen in healthcare the dramatic shift of from fee to services to fees for value and fees for quality. We've seen the dramatic shift between the different areas of that. My wife is a nurse practitioner in a hospital. She went from being the primary internal medicine person from an average of 10 patients to, for the last 8 or 9 months, she has 27 to 30 patients every day with 4 or 5 admits almost every day. And you see that pressure change. I mean, the burnout is beginning to get severe because of those changes and how that are. Then you see the new approaches which tie into barriers for growth where genomics are beginning to play. You're seeing the advent of AI tremendously in healthcare. And some of it's good, some of it's very, very bad. And you see regenerative healthcare beginning to play in that marketplace. And the regulatory environment and the policies are not keeping up in healthcare, which is the same as what we see in many other industries today. We're seeing manufacturing being there. I led the first semiconductor roadmap, and we see even in semiconductors, those huge changes now as architectures are thrown away, as process nodes are thrown out, and the type of processors you need. I think we're on the cusp of not just quantum computing, but biological computing. And that's going to be a tremendous changer across all industries. So Dr. Sri, are we targeting the right market segments? It kind of depends if you're looking in your rearview mirror or if you're looking out your windshield. And if you're looking at your windshield, I would say, no, we're not. If I'm looking in my rearview mirror, many of the startups and growth companies are still in that rearview mirror mode, and they're not looking forward towards the future.
Thank you. Mr. Paulo, what you want to respond on this question?
But the key point is, of course, that as David said, is a really fluid market right now and fluid trends. So we need to try to anticipate what is going to be the next future trends. And so we have the hard trends and the soft trends, as Jeff Burns said. And the hard one, well, ineluctable. So it's going to happen in any case, with or without our input. And so at this stage, to act on a really broader vision of design thinking, so understanding better on real detail for any kind of customer target, what are really their needs, connected with the previous demand about the money. There is a lot of money all around. So, but the money floating literally. So one thing is, of course, bureaucracy. The other are, of course, current wars. If you need money to be invested in weapons instead of in health or instruction, of course, is something of the massive trend. And we cannot, unfortunately, do anything that just ask for more peace and more effective production and effective, better world generally. And that is connected with, of course, with the carbon neutrality revolution or related potentiality. New generation and the Z1 are obviously the new leader, because we have billionaires that have 25 years right now, was previously with the era of internet, and now massive with the era of the crypto and related. What is needed is a real human touch on the real behavior and desire, and expression of that as a real value, real economic value. And the key is how to be the magnet of this new type of revolution. Quantum computing, biological computing, and what is going to be called the new super mind, okay, is part of this kind of effort that technology will help us on developing. The key point is always how we are going to see it, how we are going to impact, how we are going to act on in order to have the best effort for the technology and on the worst one.
Thank you. Mr. Bill, what's your response?
Yeah, so some very interesting points have been raised which have to do with global economy. And one of the things that we are seeing is countries which are or are pursuing potential agreements where actually it's not a fair deal, where there's an equal return on investment within those deals. Seems one party is gaining more traction and economic benefits than the other. But before these agreements, we also have to have countries that also invest in themselves and in their own development. Because what good is it if their manufacturing or their production or their minerals or their resources or their education or their healthcare is substandard and does not serve their population well? And what we're seeing is, as a result of some of the things that have occurred during this administration, during the U.S. administration, is some of these long-standing goodwill activities that have been done to help boost the economies of other countries has been withdrawn, and I believe unjustly. But what this has sent a message to these countries is that they need to become more resilient and self-reliant in order to become actually good trading partners. And they will get there if they also look at investing in their abilities, using their own resources to build up industry, to build education, to build the capacity that's missing to actually create a productive society that the government is actually taking some responsibility for. And this is what I think all people around the world are looking at. Does their government actually serve their needs for what they give their government, whether it's in taxes or other costs? So I know that's being looked at in the United States. I know that's being looked at in middle-income countries and also poor countries. So low-income countries. So we need to create an equitable situation within the world economy, and so that there is some balance in terms of give and take. Otherwise, the countries that need to move forward won't, and the countries that carry maybe a greater burden than others will get stuck in that position. So if we're looking for some balance where we can move ahead economically in the world and take care of issues involving education, environment, health, and all the other factors that we need to deal with, food and safe water and so forth, we're going to need to see this major divide actually come much closer, far greater collaboration, and moving forward. So this is my view on the economic situation.
Thank you. Madam Ali, my next question for you: how well do our operations and systems support sustainable growth?
I think it depends how you measure growth, because I'm quite environmentally conscious about, and I think just focusing on an economy, especially if we live in a rural area, actually disregards the fact that kind of having some kind of conscience for ecology and having like a natural environment that's healthy for a population is really important. So essentially, I think the economy isn't the fundamental. So, and I do think that the economy is always measured on the profit and the gain, and that, and I don't think that should be the deciding factor. So, so I'm really kind of out there on the economy, and quite cynical about how they measure what they measure. And essentially, I think they should do things. It's the same as education in this country, that they measure people's ability on the exams that they sit, but that doesn't necessarily demonstrate their full potential. So I think the potentiality and the reach of what they're trying to do, and the understanding, I've spent time and worked in Malaysia, and the developing world has a lot of aspirations and inspiration on probably how we should do things differently. And I think that one of the mistakes they make is they try and follow the West and do things in the same way, and that they should find their own way through and try and avoid the pitfalls. So I think one of the things that's a shame is a lot of the areas that are really beautiful are actually, the Western world taps their resources and builds new petrochemical industries, or and the thing is, when they do that as well, they don't have the same regulations and the same health and kind of public the public responsibility for health and welfare that they do if they were in their own country. So I think the thing is, there needs a lot of change. I think change needs to happen, so we have a more moral conscience about what we do when we do kind of take projects abroad. So yeah, so I don't think it is about the economy. It sounds like I've kind of completely avoided the question, but I don't think it's just about them.
Thank you, Mr. Rob. My next question for you: how will do our operations and systems support sustainable growth?
Not well. the many of the operations and systems have been in place for decades, and the operational practices and they weren't designed to be sustainable. If you look at our entire electronic equipment ecosystem, it's based on the concept of churn, replacing hardware, not upgrading it. That we do have some capabilities to upgrade hardware, but many of those capabilities are themselves over a decade old. So we really haven't advanced design to a point, and really across the board, whether we're talking about building design, automotive design, equipment design, factory design, we really haven't advanced it to a degree that allows for rapid upgrade and replacement without disposal. And so the end result, while we could certainly build things that are far more sustainable, where the parts could be reused and where the equipment could be upgraded, we choose not to do so. The hope is, I think, at some future point, as we move to more of a services economy, and in a services economy like printers, which is a good example of a services economy where you don't really make money from churning the hardware, so you leave it in place for a much longer period of time. Then even accidentally, you get to a more sustainable model because you're not disposing of stuff as rapidly. You're just consuming the consumables, and then you see things like what HP has done by shifting their sources of consumables to renewable sources as opposed to old forest kinds of supplies, and the end result is they become more sustainable, partially because of the fact that it's more economical to be sustainable in that case. So in the end, we've been kind of unaligned in terms of driving sustainability into our overall process of consumption and disposal. largely because the economic models we're working off of are all based in almost all based in consumption and disposal. So for that to change is really going to require a fairly significant amount of government interaction and incentives to drive the change, because the initial cost of going from a disposal type of economy to one that is more of an upgrade and replacement economy does require that you go through a step where the hardware becomes, the stuff that you're converting becomes far more expensive short term, but far more economical long term, because you're upgrading it as opposed to disposing of it. So helping with that transition typically would require a significant influx of money not connected to profits and margins. Otherwise, the companies are unwilling to do it because they take a massive hit on their margins. And right now, executive management is very tactical. It's not operating strategically for the most part, and you can kind of see why. Tariffs don't help. When you've got a changing environment that is changing on an almost monthly basis, then strategic thinking goes out the door anyway. We weren't doing a lot of it to begin with, and so the end result is pretty much everybody's thinking tactically. Let's fix the problem today and not really worry about the unintended consequences of tomorrow, and that's really problematic. And so getting everybody kind of flipped back to something that to an economic model that supports a sustainable approach to manufacturing and consumption is going to require an awful lot of heavy lifting, but it's heavy lifting that needs to be done if we really want to move away from polluting our environment and creating these massive future problems that either our descendants, or in some cases it's happening so badly that we're still going to have to deal with if we're still around. So it's kind of a mess at the moment. It has been for a while.
Thank you, Mr. David. My next question for you: are there external factors, regulations, competitions, market conditions holding us back?
No, Dr. Sheikh, there's always external factors that are in there. And, we've heard several of them in some of the answers to some of the earlier questions. And, some of the most common ones are regulations, competition, market conditions, and as Rob was talking about, shifts in the very basic business strategy you have happening there. So, in the regulatory environment, and it's very much become a global regulatory environment now. There's a lot of overregulation, and there's a lot of rapidly changing regulations, particularly around artificial intelligence, around privacy, around even the supply chains and logistics that can impose really high compliance costs. It can create uncertainty, and it is a tremendous drain on resources. For example, there's a study done here in the United States recently where over half of small businesses say that regulatory compliance hinders their growth. And you see that. You see taxation becoming a global hindrance to growth and scaling in there. You see really the policy instability. And, our current administration is part of that here in the United States with the emphasis on new tariffs. But you see tariffs, 90% of the world does tariffs, the statistics I see. And so it's not a level playing field almost anywhere in the world. So you see that as an external that can be in there. You see new employment rules that make long-term planning there. And you see competitive pressures. You see markets becoming saturated. You see barriers to entry happening, particularly in the startup world, because you see high startup costs happening now, particularly as good talent becomes difficult and the advanced tools are becoming more and more expensive. You're seeing established competitors doing everything they can do to, in many instances, price startups and early stage growth out of the marketplace. You're seeing things like more, particularly the large companies, trying to do exclusive contracts. They're trying to exert more control over supply chain to prevent new entries from gaining a foothold, from scaling fast, from doing other things like that. And you see things within the market externally there, particularly economic downturns, inflation, recession, consumer uncertainty. You see the global conflicts and threats of global conflicts dramatically changing your ability to grow in there. You're seeing increases in many of the raw materials, and you're seeing increasing costs for energy in many places, and it becomes some difficult trade-offs there. One of the very interesting one is we're seeing changing not just consumer behavior with shift in consumer preferences and things like that, but we're seeing changing behavior in the workforce as well. We have 5 generations in the workforce now at the same time, which we haven't had in the history of the world before. And each of those generations wants to work differently in the workforce. They want to communicate differently. They want to do different tools. They want to have everything. And as an external factor, that view of these generations with the way they want to work is a tremendous, tremendous barrier to growth. Millennials did not want to work in an environment that a baby boomer did. And we're seeing that across all the generations. So that external reference is dramatically impacting us there. Societal trends, but to me, some of the biggest external factors that are hitting us today are the last two I'm going to mention. Is you have this whole geopolitical instability. And it's hard to look at scaling when you don't understand the geopolitical marketplace today. Because you see not only just the trade disputes, but you see the political unrest that directly there. And you're seeing in many instances where some of the new laws like the EU anti-bribery laws, you see the same thing in the United States, you see the same thing in UK, you see some of the same one in Asia, making it where if you're going to scale in markets where that had been commonplace, you can't go in there and be legally compliant plus being culturally compliant in those marketplaces. So that interface between the geopolitical there is tremendous. And the last one I'm going to mention is technology disruptions. And Rob has done a great job of talking about the technology disruptions. But I believe it's going to get even exaggerated more. We're in a time now with the growth of sensors, the growth of Internet of Things, with automation taking place there, with the movement from more centralized approaches to dealing with information, data, creating knowledge and wisdom to things being done at the edge of cloud because you want low latency, you want fast response. And the regulatory impact on technology of where the privacy laws are making it where you cannot move people's data, for example, out of many of the states, even in the United States now. I cannot move data from here in Texas to California because I'm in violation of the privacy laws now in both states. How can I scale? How can I really do that with that type of uncertainty of am I in compliant? Is my technology going to support me? Am I using databases that are going to sync across those regions? But by syncing, does that charge you the problems? And so those are some of the things that I think are really there, Dr. Sri.
Thank you, Mr. Paolo. My next question for you, are we leveraging technology and innovation to drive growth?
Big question. the reality is that we have a sort of real hard resistance inside the society globally, even the corporate. What I mean, there is a lot of investment on innovation, but not properly in a real open innovation, not creating ecosystem. Coming back to the last question, the redundance of bureaucracy everywhere is not definitely compelling to a real disrupt innovation adoption in any part of the country, and we are living in a global economy. So what David was saying about geopolitical governing rules plus cultures, that obviously should be the must, even the cultures, is growing and growing in a deeply redundance of bureaucracy governing rules, because we are most part for the politician related scary about the innovation and not properly surfing the wave. And that is going to be a crucial impact. Give an example. What's about blockchain and smart contract full adoption to avoid bureaucracy, redundance, or governing laws? We have the same problem that David mentioned here from Texas to Los Angeles in any kind of reason in Italy, because it was approved a kind of article, the fifth article. And so any region has its own rules for the law, for the things, and embarrassing different system about the informatic big data issuing and related. So one system cannot talk with the other. And that's, of course, a lack of transparency, a deep barrier for the real innovation. And we have the full potentiality of leveraging. And we have even new area, for example, Middle East, this is totally pushing for this kind of hard innovation coming from all positions. They have even on carbon neutrality good position, and on a generative AI and all related, a massive positioning with the just yesterday was done another agreement between Emirates and King of Saudi Arabia for 60 billion, so interchange about AI and net zero compliance policies. So some, let's see, less democratic countries are governing this better by government position. West economies are a bit too ancient. I mean, we have all the population and perhaps too old governing laws, too scary just about outgoverning everything, about GDPR, about no problem on that, no problem on that, but not properly understanding the full phenomena, the impact on the society point of view, and how to serve it properly to evaluate any kind of steps in the schools, so to create the talent, not just to govern. And so thinking to the long trend period, but even right now, how to act on properly in order to, you know, that with the Group of Future Lab, there is a couple of books about AI future and the AI nation impact and related. And that is, we as consultant, as formers, full-time study the new trends and the new things, we can give the framework. But there are other, I mean, the heavy economist power and the heavy politician have the responsibility to act on properly in order to evaluate and leverage any type of possible innovation, not just technological one, but as mindset and real creating real open innovation ecosystem are all related.
Thank you. My final question for Mr. Bill: do we have a clear and adaptable growth strategy supported by data?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because in this discussion, we've come across several things where, and it kind of brought to mind that, you know, Should we be placing our priorities on data or information or on people? And, there's been this long-standing concept that as you develop and create innovation, you make things easier, but you put people out of work who are doing those functions. And now machines are doing that. But I thought of a really good example, and it's not the movie I, Robot. It's more actually what happens very recently in all the press coming out of the UK regarding the postal system there and that scandal. So I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it is quite an interesting story, and it's a great example of what happens when our priority shifts from the human element to machines and data. And I think Ali really made a point of this, which is that we shouldn't forget that. And even, I believe even the CEO and founder of the big platform in China also said that our biggest danger is to remove the human element from being the most important part of moving forward. And I believe that as we grow, we should never forget that. And there might be, with a lot of excitement, thinking that, oh yes, this is easier. But are we losing our critical thinking? Are we losing our attention span? Are we losing our ability to socialize? And are we losing our creativity? And this is something we need to look at in the future moving forward, is to look at these innovations so that they're assisting us and not doing us in. And so I did actually I was in this discussion with a neighbor recently, and he said, on some things it's become harder with technology than it was before. And I said, well, I could see why you could say that. So I think this is something we need to really keep uppermost in our minds as we move forward, is to not lose our identities and abilities as human beings to do the thinking and make the final decisions in using technology and data.
Thank you. This is excellent discussions. Especially this will be very, very valuable for the corporates from Asia Pacific, those who want to learn more barriers to growth. We have our speakers, famous speakers from around the world. They join today's sessions. Besides that, for our scientific research, I want to share two books. Recently, our World Talent Economic Forums, we published two scientific books. One with this IDI Global. One is Case on AI-driven talent economy and human capitals. Different universities and corporate body from around the world, they publish their case study through this book, and we cover AI professionalism, artificial intelligence, automotive safety, capital management, customer behavior, digital economy, HR tech setups, learning models, talent management, neuro digitals, workforce trends, and so on. We publish another books also. Our another books is based on agropreneurships. Agriculture, is a very important factor for South Asia. many universities from around the world, uh, they actually publish their research paper through these resilient, sustainable, and AI-enabled ventures in agripreneurship. And we focus on agribusiness, agricultural science and technology, agripreneurships, artificial intelligence, blue economy, digital technologies, entrepreneurship, gender inclusivity, nanotechnologies, uh, youth and women empowerment, and so on. And also different universities from around the world, they publish their papers with us. So I request all of our audience, please share our content as much as possible with the government agency and corporations and academia. And especially I want to give special thanks to our speaker, Madam Ali Rice, Mr. Rob Enderley, Mr. David Smith, Mr. Paulo for joining today's sessions. Mr. Bill, I think this is first sessions. I want to invite you all more to join in our ecosystem. We can collaborate together and solve all of the complex problems of our society. Thank you, everyone, for
Pleasure.
joining this session.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye bye. Thank you.
Me too.
Take care.
Bye.
Great discussion.
Bye.